Again, my name is Mark Johnston. I lead global business development for Amazon Web Services, which is the cloud computing arm of Amazon. And for all of you that are Amazon customers, I just want to say thank you for your business. I want to talk to you today about, I want to set the context really for what's happening in the healthcare industry, and then give it, kind of bring it to life through customer stories. I think it's important to understand that, you know, the cloud, a lot of people don't really understand the depth of what we do, and specifically in healthcare, so I'm going to try and share that with you today. And picking up on the theme of innovation, which is, you know, the core of this conference, I want to share with you some of the exciting things that we're doing with our customer base. So to start it off, I think this is a bit of a controversial slide if you think about it. You step back and look at what it's telling you. The industries that we operate in across the globe are really changing in a lot of ways. A lot of disruption, a lot of new innovation. And in healthcare, I think it's a good example of an industry that actually needs it. But it's telling because if you look at, you know, the statistic around the average lifespan of an S&P company declining from 67 to 15 years, the fact that 2/3 of IT budgets actually are spent just keeping the lights on, and effectively that, and I'm going to talk about security and compliance at the tail end of my talk, but the cybersecurity threats in healthcare are really severe right now, and I want to give you some perspective on why and what we're doing about it. And what this means to you is that if you don't focus on creating innovation, and if you're not taking what you've traditionally done in your IT model to move it into innovation, you don't get the agility that you need in a business. And I think people that, if you know, you were to ask our customer base, why are they using AWS and why have they gone to the cloud? It's really to create agility in their business. And if you don't, I think that to the point in the last slide, you risk disruption yourself. So what this means is that you need to focus on your core mission, which is, you know, not really, I would argue that no one in this room is going to differentiate their business on how well you run your infrastructure and your IT operations. So people are focusing more on how they create value, concentrating on new business initiatives and dedicating more resources to innovation. There's a quote on the screen here from Nordstrom, which is often viewed as kind of the gold standard in customer service. And I think the important point from that quote is that, you know, retailing, and if you think about what Nordstrom does, it's a very dynamic business, and it's changing all the time. So you have to adapt to customer patterns. You have to create products in your distribution and your stores, whether they're online or whether they're physical. So it's a really dynamic type of environment, and Nordstrom's a great customer of ours, both based in Seattle, of course. So a couple things I wanted to share with you, first of all, is that, you know, as we talk about healthcare and life sciences, it's important to understand that many of our customers actually are global. And what we can do for them is that we can enable global distribution of their services and their software via this infrastructure that we have. So when I say a region, there's 12 that are active. Actually, it's 13 now. This slide is, we just launched India. But effectively, the round circles represent regions around the globe, and then the availability zones are an architecture that we have. So when we say a region, it actually is designed for fault tolerance, and we have multiple data centers under each availability zone. So think of it as a concentration within a given geographic region that is designed for fault tolerance. Gartner suggests that we have computing capacity and storage capacity that dwarfs our competition, and I think that's because we've been at this longer than anyone. 10 years now, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And I would offer to you that there's really no compression algorithm for experience. So as we continue to grow, as we listen to our customers, as we build new facilities, it's important to understand that we're doing this for our customers so that they can take advantage of this global capability. The other thing that's important is pace of innovation. So, you know, our brand, Amazon, is generally, a lot of people think that we're an innovative company, and we are. And this slide actually characterizes the pace of innovation at AWS. So last year, we released 722 major features or new services, and that's almost 2,000 since our inception. We're on pace in 2016 to exceed that, and it's a really, I can tell you, working at AWS, it's a constant, drumbeat of new services that we release to our customer base. The other thing is that people think about the cloud. This is a bit of an eye chart. I apologize for that, but most people think about the cloud as computing and storage and networking and databases, but it's really the innovation that we've done is focused, about a third of our innovation is in security and compliance, but it's designing new services that help the developer community use components, think of them as building blocks if you would, that actually accelerate the time to deploy applications, build them, and service their customer base. So things like mobility, analytics, DevOps, which we call, it's a concept of integrating operations and development together, but we've got a full IoT hub, mobility services, down to the fact that you could actually, if you release a mobile application, you do it on AWS, you can actually test it in our device farm across all the different devices and operating systems that exist out there in the hands of your user community. We do embrace hybrid architecture. We've got full support, training, certification. So we've grown into a very holistic set of services, and based upon our innovation, we will continue to do so. So let's talk about why, and I want to bring it now to the healthcare industry. So I mentioned agility, but if you think about a lot of the workloads that exist in the healthcare industry, so processing of transactions in a health information exchange, very spiky. Insurance exchanges go up and they're slammed in November, and then they go down, and basically you have the ability now with the cloud to effectively pay for what you use. So it's not uncommon for our customers to scale up. In genomic sequencing, for instance, we've done individual sequencing runs that are close to 110,000 cores. So they run for several hours, customers design them, they run for several hours, and then they shut them down. You only pay for what you use. So it's a good segue into the first case study that I wanted to chat about with. If you don't know who Illumina is, they're the leading global producer of next-generation sequencing equipment. And they've designed their software so that I think the former speaker was talking about a data tsunami. Genomic sequencing is one of the conditions. Many people think that it will become the biggest data set on the planet. But the quote from Alex Dickinson here is, I think it fundamentally embraces or encapsulates what our customers are experiencing using our service. So focus on what they're good at, which is genomic sequencing. The data comes off the machines, it goes into the cloud, and their analytics software, which is base-based, actually allows you to do variant analysis and calling based upon the individual patient's genome. Another thing in terms of healthcare, Cleveland Clinic, it's a good example. You guys probably all know the Cleveland Clinic, but they take patients from around the world. They're very big in different specialties like neuroscience. So, they went to this idea of saying, hey, we need to put a layer of capability on top of our core system. So, if you come for a neuro consult at Cleveland Clinic, you'll go online, you'll actually enter all your information, and that is routed then to the neurology community within their network. They also have built an application that allows them to schedule any resource across the Cleveland Clinic's network to go in and do patient scheduling. So again, I think the cloud gave them the capability to launch these two applications in a matter of weeks, which traditionally might have taken years. Orion Healthcare is a big customer of ours. For those of you who do not know Orion, they're based in New Zealand. They're one of the leading, they've got about 110 million patient records within the Orion Healthcare platform. So they've launched a new platform called Amadeus on AWS, and effectively what it does is it allows scalability across their different customer base. The Cal Index Exchange in the state of California is one of the largest HIEs now. It's sponsored by the Blue Cross carriers out in California, but they've got about 11 million patients. So I guess it's pretty important to understand that, we scale here, and I'm going to talk about another customer, Change Healthcare, here is based in Nashville, and what they're doing with their data. But I think the point here with Orion is it's not only do we support what they're doing, the ecosystem that we have of different customers allows them to build applications on top of the data that they produce with their health information exchange. And that's very exciting to them. So what are the trends that are emerging throughout the industry? The first is, how do you effectively create data exchange through your network? I like to talk about data as the new currency in healthcare. So your ability to actually distribute that currency and make sure that it's coordinated across all of your different components within your network, care collaboration, telemedicine, a variety of different use cases is one of the patterns that we're seeing. I'm going to talk about some innovations in care delivery and then consumer applications and personalized medicine I'm going to go into as well. So precision medicine was mentioned earlier in the talk from the CMS, and I think if you think about what precision medicine means, it actually is a big data problem. We're getting more specific, and the drug companies in their development are actually doing research to actually target therapeutics that will be personalized. But more importantly, if you think about this from the clinician standpoint, they have to understand, based upon a specific patient's genome and their phenotype and all of their clinical findings, what are the best treatment options for them. So it effectively allows you to do all this and compute large data sets, deploy them through physician networks, and effectively manage the short-term and long-term storage. So we have integrated lifecycle management where you can actually take something like a medical image, keep it in hot storage for a period of time, and then move it off to warm and then cold for cost optimization. So this quote here from Intermountain Healthcare, I think, suggests that what they really wanted to do, and the partner that actually built the application on top of AWS is SciAps. SciAps is also running here at the Sarah Cannon Cancer Institute, which is HCA's cancer center here in Nashville. They also run in a variety of different facilities across the United States, and now, more importantly, they're moving into international markets. But what they really wanted to do was actually take this information, capsulate it, and provide it to the physician in a way that's very tailored to the individual patient's condition. So we provide the horsepower behind it. It's a great example of a partner bringing the intelligence that is specific to the individual clinical community and the needs of a patient. And I think this testament from Intermountain Healthcare says that it's all about getting information to the oncologist very quickly in a very specific way for an individual patient. This next example, I think medication adherence has been promoted a couple times in different talks about a big challenge. And it is a challenge not only here in this country but globally. And in this scenario, the partners that we're working with, Proteus actually has designed a gelatin capsule that actually has a biometric reactive sensor in it. And so when the patient ingests the drug, and in this case it's for schizophrenia, and it's very important in behavioral medicine to actually keep patients on any sort of drug. Schizophrenia is one that's critically important. The patient takes their therapeutics every day. But what happens is the patch, which is down in the bottom right of the tablet, actually the patient wears it, they ingest the therapeutic, it reacts, sends a signal to the patch, which communicates to a mobile device. Now, the important thing is that it gives feedback to the individual patient, but in the event that the patient doesn't take their drug, the workflow that is generated here actually sends a message out to a case manager to effectively intervene and get back with the patient to make sure that they get on their regimen. And this is a big problem in the United States. If you think about, a script's written, I don't know the exact statistics. It's been quoted several times, but effectively, the fulfillment rate drops off dramatically. I think it's about 80% of scripts are actually fulfilled, and then what happens to the patient, whether or not they take their drugs is a whole nother story. So this is a great example of what I think you'll see more and more of specific to chronic conditions. Propeller Health was mentioned in another talk, and I think it's a great example too. Boehringer Ingelheim is the therapeutic manufacturer that provides a lot of pulmonary drugs. So they work with Propeller Health, and they're actually an investor in the company. But what we've done is we've actually created a IoT-enabled sensor, so when the therapeutic is discharged via the inhaler, it actually sends a signal to a mobile application, again for the patient's feedback loop, but more importantly, they can see environmental factors such as smog, humidity, and so on that actually aggravates their condition. And they also see other patients within their community in a given region to, again, bring that sense of community and feedback into how something like COPD or asthma is actually managed. And I think another really good example of what's happening in IoT is the work that we've done with Philips. So we house, I think, 15, 16 petabytes now of medical imaging data on AWS. But more importantly, we've developed the Health Suite Digital Platform. That's the acronym HSDP stands for. And we do it in a way that effectively provides Philips with full scalability. So they're very strong in the monitoring, the acute care monitoring business, as well as home care monitoring and medical imaging. So they start effectively plumbing, if you will, the HSDP platform with all of the data that they generate from their different equipment that's in the field. But more importantly, they're starting to build application experiences on top of it and integrating other data sets to create new innovation capabilities, again, on that currency of data. I mentioned Change Healthcare. Change, it's an interesting company. You've read in the news, they're doing an acquisition now. But Change is one of our largest healthcare customers in terms of transactional volume. They process billions of transactions on us annually. And what's happening with their business is not only do we support the core transactional capabilities around revenue cycle management, but they're starting to look at patterns now and what the data is telling them. So a couple of years ago, influenza didn't really hit the United States very hard, and what happened was the revenues actually went down in a lot of providers because they're traditionally looking for that bump in the flu season where patients come in and need medical care. So what they're trying to do with their data science is actually look at the patterns of their claims and provide predictive logic as to what's going to happen, if you will. They're not suggesting that they can predict flu outbreaks, but they know the leading indicators of what's happening so that they can provide information around their core transactional data cycles to actually enable their customers with capabilities around prediction as it relates to different things like influenza. So I think it's a good example of a company that actually has used AWS to support their core business, but also moving it forward to new services and enabling innovation for their community. So I mentioned security and compliance, and I would be remiss if I didn't touch on this topic. What's happening in this area, you guys have all heard about the ransomware attacks, and what has traditionally, I've been at AWS now over 2 years, and 2 years ago I had a lot of conversations with healthcare executives that were scared of the cloud because of security and compliance. And that's really flipped now. So effectively it becomes a reason to go to the cloud. I can tell you that the resources that our company puts on this subject, I mentioned our pace of innovation, about 30% of our innovation is all around security and compliance. It is a critically important part of what we do. And we have this notion of a shared responsibility. So we secure the infrastructure. Our environments are built for all of the demands of different industries, of course, healthcare, life sciences, financial services, and other highly regulated industries. We also support the U.S. intelligence community through an individual region that we've put forward called GovCloud. But it's important to understand that we manage over 1,800 security controls so that our customers don't have to. So they take our infrastructure, they build on top of it. We have a variety of different certifications. We have more certifications globally than any other cloud provider. And what happens then is that our customers build on top, whether you're partners or individual customers. They make the determination about the intellectual property controls, where data resides, and so on. We don't do any of that arbitrarily. So the shared responsibility model is really an important element of what we do. So customer applications that are built actually provide all of the data access rights and usage and so on. But the infrastructure, we've just basically taken it away from them so that they don't have to worry about that piece, which that's a lot of resources that you would have to deploy to control your infrastructure environment, which you can now redeploy on value creation for your customer base. So in the cloud, really, infrastructure and security is codified. We have things like machine images, cloud formation templates that allow you to stamp out a consistent configuration of different capabilities that you might need to run your business. We have all kinds of built-in tools to monitor it. You can actually create alerts as it relates to anything that deviates from a given configuration or access that you've instituted. And then we have a tremendous amount of capabilities around automatically logging, so automated traceability and verifiability for audit controls. And that is actually just written into the code, so once you build an application, you can actually deploy it multiple times. I mentioned health information exchanges. We have health information exchanges in a box now where you can point, click, and deploy. We've built clusters for things like genomic sequencing, computational chemistry, that actually a customer will go in and just effectively enter into a console the number of instances they want to launch, and effectively it just happens. So again, simplification. We look for capabilities in our company to eliminate friction, as we call it, for our customers. We have a business associate agreement. We're fully HIPAA enabled. We have architectural guidance as it relates to how you build HIPAA applications that store, process, and manage protected health information. And it crosses all of our major services. We're going to be releasing a whole new wave of services that will fall into our HIPAA compliance in the coming months. And we also, on the life sciences side of our business, we are not an FDA-covered entity, but we do a lot of business with customers that actually are regulated by the FDA. So we've put forward guidance in January of this year about how you work with the AWS cloud to support validated workloads, specifically in things like development, manufacturing, and life sciences. So it's GXP is the acronym for clinical. The X you would replace with clinical, lab, and manufacturing, so GCP, GLP, GMP. And we have a very strong partner community, whether it's clinical trials, lab software, things like tracking and traceability across manufacturing. Very important that you can actually move to the cloud. You get all the business benefit, but actually solve the regulator issue as well. This final quote, I think, is pretty important. If you follow security in the industry, the dark web is actually the marketplace, if you will, for hackers. But I'm not sure if you know what a Social Security number fetches on the dark web. It's about $1. A medical record nowadays is going for $50. So if you look at the community of hackers that are going after medical information, some telling statistics over the last couple of days of, the number of, I've had my, from an insurer that covers myself and my family, I've had my information be compromised personally. So this is a very prevailing problem. And I think this quote from Lee Kim says it all, is that most healthcare institutions are really challenged with keeping pace with this. And again, to my earlier point, what used to be an objection is now turning into a reason to go to the cloud. And I think it really is, if you think about the healthcare industry, in need of innovation, open to disruption, new entrants like in the insurance and the payer side, companies like Oscar Insurance that have basically disrupted the whole traditional payer model are running on AWS. And the cybersecurity support that we provide them was a critical component in making that decision to do so. So hopefully this gave you a very good overview of AWS and some proof points in healthcare. Very much appreciate your attention today, and if there's anything that we could ever do for you, please reach out to us. Thank you very much.